Coming up on a newscast, South Korea plans to spend some $20 billion to create a stronger defense system that can counter North Korea's evolving nuclear and missile threats. USFK released footage of a recent live-fire drill involving a multiple launch rocket system. Japan reportedly complained over Washington's use of the term East Sea. The U.S. used the name to refer to the venue for last month's joint training with South Korea. Ukrainian authorities are encouraging civilians to cut back on using electricity. This comes as Russia reportedly destroyed more than 40% of the country's energy facilities. Hello, we'll be wrapping up the week well. I'm Daniel Che here to bring the latest. Let's begin with our top story. South Korea plans to set aside more than $20 billion for the next 5 years. The funds will be used to create a stronger defense system that can better counter Pyongyang's evolving nuclear and missile threats. Bae Eun-ji starts us off.
South Korea's defense ministry announced Friday that starting next year until 2027, it'll spend $20 billion to create its three-axis defense system, the South Korean military's three-pronged response to North Korea's missile attacks. First, preemptive strikes on North Korea's nuclear and missile launch sites, which Seoul's defense ministry said it'll invest nearly $6 billion. Second, intercepting the North's missiles. That'll require another $5.8 billion to develop and deploy weapons like the country's long-range surface-to-air missile to shoot down ballistic missiles at altitudes of around 50 to 60 kilometers. Third is mass retaliation against North Korea following an attack on the South, which the ministry plans to spend almost $3.4 billion. And $5.8 billion will be used to create defense systems like reconnaissance satellites. Meanwhile, to better counter North Korea's threats at sea, South Korea's Navy said in a parliamentary session on Friday that it'll build a key deterrent system that includes a maritime multi-layered missile defense platform. This will allow the naval force to hit targets more precisely. The Navy also plans to remove one of the three fleet commands and instead aims to create a new command running unmanned ships, submarines, and aircraft, as part of its efforts to be prepared for a potential troop shortage caused by the country's low birth rate. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
USFK released video footage of a recent live-fire drill, part of routine training involving its multiple launch rocket system. In a post on Facebook, it said soldiers from the 210th Field Artillery Brigade conducted the exercise at Rocket Valley near Pocheon. Such training helps units hone skills and maintain strong readiness. North Korea claimed last Friday that its own firing of artillery was a countermeasure to these drills. Soon after that claim, a South Korean military official confirmed that the drill by USFK was part of regular training. And Japan reportedly complained over Washington's use of the term East Sea in describing the location for a joint military exercise with South Korea. Washington used the term to refer to the location for last month's training. According to Asahi Shimbun, the U.S. military replaced the term with waters between Korea and Japan after the Japanese government demanded a correction. Tokyo reportedly stated the internationally established name for the waters, which they claim as the Sea of Japan, should be used instead. Elsewhere around the world, President Zelensky is encouraging Ukrainians to cut back on using electricity to cope with a possible energy crisis. This comes as Russia reportedly destroyed more than 40% of the country's power facilities. Choi Min-jung has the latest.
Ukraine is cutting its own power after losing over a third of its power-generating capacity to Russian strikes. Ukraine's energy minister says there have been more than 300 strikes on the country's energy facilities over the past 10 days. To stabilize energy supply, President Volodymyr Zelensky said people should be conscious of electricity consumption and avoid unnecessary appliances. He also added that Russia's attack on power plants is aimed at forcing Ukrainians to leave their homes for Europe.
Russia is provoking a new wave of migration of Ukrainians to the EU countries. Russia's terror against our energy facilities is aimed at creating as many problems with electricity and heat in Ukraine as possible this autumn and winter, so that as many Ukrainians as possible go to your countries.
Russia has been reportedly receiving drones from Iran to bombard Ukraine. The UK on Thursday accused Iran of adding to the suffering of Ukrainians and imposed new sanctions, including travel bans, on 3 Iranian officials and a company responsible for supplying with drones. Prior to the UK's decision, the European Union also agreed to impose sanctions on the same Iranian company and individuals. The US also said that there is abundant evidence that Iran is supplying drones to Russia. The White House also confirmed that Iran sent personnel to Crimea to assist Russian soldiers using them. However, Iranian authorities have repeatedly denied any involvement. Meanwhile, fighting has escalated in Kherson, one of 4 regions Russia claims to have annexed. Pro-Russia authorities plan on relocating some 60,000 civilians due to fears of a Ukrainian counteroffensive. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Over in the UK, Liz Truss is resigning after serving just 45 days as the country's prime minister. Critics say her government's economic policies caused chaos in the financial markets. She set the record as the shortest premiership in British history. Kim Yo-sun has the full story.
UK Prime Minister Liz Truss announced her resignation on Thursday following 6 weeks in office marked by turmoil. This makes her the shortest-serving prime minister in the country's history.
I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
In a brief speech in front of Downing Street, Truss said that she came into office at a time of great economic and international instability. She further explained that the Conservative Party had elected her on a mandate to cut taxes and boost economic growth. But her bold tax cuts spooked the market so badly that the country's central bank staged an emergency intervention. Truss says she will remain in office until her successor is chosen, and a leadership contest is expected to take place over the next week. Previously, leadership battles could be long, drawn-out affairs, taking weeks to find a winner. However, with new rules for the contest now in place, organizers say any candidate to replace Truss will need the backing of at least 100 lawmakers. If only one candidate passes that threshold by 2 p.m. next Monday local time, then he or she will automatically become the next prime minister. But if 3 candidates meet that threshold, the one with the lowest number of votes will be eliminated. Then an online vote by party members would decide between the remaining 2 candidates, with the new prime minister to be announced next Friday. Rishi Sunak, Britain's former finance minister and Truss's main opponent in this year's Conservative Party leadership race, is now seen as a favorite to replace her. Former Defense Secretary Penny Mordaunt has also surged to prominence. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson is also being mentioned for the post, despite being ousted from office just 3 months ago. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
Back here in the nation, the daily COVID-19 tally remained below 38,000. Still, local authorities warn there are signs of caseloads increasing again. According to the WHO, more than 300 versions of Omicron are now circulating globally. Jung Eun-ju brings the updates.
South Korea's new COVID-19 cases stayed below 30,000 for the 3rd straight day on Friday. Although the country's 6th wave has slowed since mid-August, the health authorities caution that the overall pace of the slowdown is decreasing. The country reported over 24,000 COVID-19 infections on Friday, adding 30 deaths and 233 who are critically ill. The COVID-19 R number surpassed 1 for the first time in 9 weeks on Friday at 1.09. The R number, or reproduction rate, represents new infections estimated to stem from a single case. This further hints that the virus is spreading quickly again and raises concerns over a possible pandemic with a seasonal flu. Cases of the flu have also been rising in recent days, with some 6.2 people in every 1,000 infected. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization said Thursday at a press conference that more than 300 versions of Omicron are now circulating globally, and new Omicron subvariants are showing signs of increased transmissibility and properties of immune escape. According to the head of the UN agency's technical team for COVID-19, 3 subvariants, XBB, BQ1, and BQ1.1, are spreading quickly. Data suggests that XBB is the most effective at evading immunity because it is a mashup of 2 Omicron subvariants. BQ1 and BQ1.1 are descendants of BA5, the dominant strain of Omicron, which led to the sixth wave in South Korea. The WHO cautioned that with reduced tracking of COVID-19 infection routes, it's hard to keep tabs on and understand the new subvariants. 정은주, Arirang News.
South Korea's exports are down as imports are up again. The country's on course for another monthly trade deficit. So far this month, it already reached $5 billion. Yoon helps us look beyond the digits.
South Korea may be about to see the brakes being pulled on exports for the first time in 2 years. Data released by the Korea Customs Service on Friday shows that the country's exports in the first 20 days of October dropped 5.5% on year to a little over $32.4 billion. Specifically, exports of semiconductors dropped 12.8% on year, largely affected by the global economic slowdown. Should chip exports drop for this month as a whole, it would mark 3 consecutive months of decline. Exports of steel products, wireless telecommunication devices, and ships also plunged in the same period. Exports to China saw a drop of 16.3% on year, contributing to an overall export drop as China is the biggest export market for South Korea.
China is seeing slower economic growth now as they have reported 0.4% of growth for the second quarter this year. This is discouraging consumption in the country and eventually leading to a drop in exports to China. And with the global economic slowdown, the export crisis is expected to deepen next year.
Meanwhile, imports increased 1.9% on year in the first 20 days of this month to $37.3 billion, largely driven by chips, gas, chip manufacturing equipment, and coal. The trade deficit hit $4.9 billion in the first 20 days of October, which is more than the same period the month before. South Korea has already seen a trade deficit for 6 straight months for the first time in 25 years. And if the country records a trade deficit for October as a whole, it could set the wheels in motion for further poor export performance down the road. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
South Korean regulators are moving to crack down on monopolies in the online platform sector, an issue brought to the fore by a disruption to Kakao services, which are used for essential communication and commerce by almost everyone in the country. At the National Assembly's regular audit of the government, the FTC chair said the outage was caused indirectly by the tech giant's monopolistic dominance. Han Gi-jung pointed out that before the end of the year, the agency will devise measures to prevent a single online platform company from dominating the market. The FTC also plans to draft bills to strengthen rules on business mergers and also enforce punishments for illegal activities. President Yoon Suk-yeol thanked the country's law enforcement officers to mark Police Day. Around 2,000 people attended Friday's event in Songdo, including police officers, the head of the KNPA, as well as the families of officers who died in the line of duty. The South Korean leader emphasized public safety is a foundation of freedom and asked for the police to respond strongly to crimes targeting the vulnerable, as well as fraud and drug smuggling or abuse. He also highlighted the importance of greater R&D to help improve the force.
과학기술 중심의 새로운 치안 패러다임을 위해 정부는 범죄 피해자 위치 추적 기술의 고도화, 디지털 성범죄 위장 수사 지원, 무인 순찰 로봇 개발 등 치안 R&D 분야를 적극 지원하겠습니다.
President Yoon also called for a pan-governmental safety net to protect victims and prevent repeat offenses. 2 workers have died, 3 others are injured after falling at a warehouse construction site in Anseong, Gyeonggi-do Province. All 5 are foreigners. According to police, they fell around 5 meters while doing cement work. The 2 who died are Chinese men in their 30s. A Chinese woman is unconscious in hospital. An official said the accident could have been caused by the formwork collapsing due to the heavy cement. Police and the Labor Ministry are looking into the exact cause. Plastic waste, a major environmental problem, but several firms are finding ways to turn the items back into oil. This involves reversing the production process. Yoon Jin explains further.
Waste plastic is cut into small pieces, and this reactor heats the plastic at very high temperatures of 400 to 500 degrees Celsius. This is called pyrolysis, where the usual production process of making plastics from fuel is reversed. The heated plastic is first turned into gas, which is then cooled and becomes heavy or light oil. Now, the petrochemical industry in South Korea is developing pyrolysis that instead of using heat, converts the recycled plastic waste chemically. SK Innovation started injecting pyrolytic oil as a raw material in some of its petrochemical processes last year. And Hyundai Oil Bank was the first refinery to acquire an international eco-friendly product certification. It is now preparing to enter the global market.
Last year, we applied for a regulatory sandbox to use pyrolysis oil as a raw material and got regulatory exemption. We plan to process 4,800 tons of oil to produce eco-friendly naphtha by next month.
But the potential for development in alternative ways to produce fuel seems endless. A company has emerged that produces oil not by pyrolysis, but by using ceramic catalysts and wavelength energy. When plastic wrapping from ramen is put into the device, oil is extracted and just the aluminum remains. Instead of applying heat, this process works like a microwave where the bonds between carbon molecules are broken.
This is a non-combustion facility. The process itself creates wavelength energy that breaks the molecular structure of the plastic wrapping in an eco-friendly way, so there's no combustion in the process.
The company is getting recognition and has already patented its technology in more than 20 countries, with contracts for export finalized with the United Kingdom. With technology now able to turn trash back into useful resources, recycling has become less of a choice and even more of an imperative. 이은진, Arirang News.
The 2022 World Cup in Qatar brings together some of the best footballers from across the globe to compete for greatness. Many superstars of tomorrow will be watching their heroes closely as they train and prepare for their time to shine. Kim Do-yeon went to meet one of the hundreds of such teams training here in South Korea.
At a local football field in Icheon, Gyeonggi-do Province, 5th and 6th graders are gearing up for a match. They're members of Team 6, a youth football club from Seongnam City. These youngsters aren't just doing this for fun.
I want to play for the national team and lead the team to victory at the World Cup.
Right now is an especially exciting time for these aspiring footballers. The World Cup is only a month away.
It's as if we're going to the World Cup ourselves. I think we can make it to the round of 16. We'll lose to Portugal 2-0, but beat Ghana 2-1 and beat Uruguay 1-0.
We couldn't make it to the round of 16 in 2018, but we beat Germany, who were ranked first in the FIFA rankings then, so I see some hope. Portugal and Uruguay are not easy opponents, but all citizens can get together to cheer for the team, and maybe there will be a miracle.
There are currently 112 under-12 club teams registered with the local football association in Gyeonggi-do Province alone. Nationwide, there are around 350 teams. Many industry insiders say the success in the 2002 World Cup, where South Korea reached the semifinals in front of their home fans, has led to the growth of the youth football system.
Certainly many kids started after the 2002 World Cup. Also, the World Cups that followed led more kids to play football. Hopefully we can do well this World Cup again, and maybe football in the country will also have another boom in popularity. That will lead a lot of talent for the nation's football pool.
These youngsters face tough competition ahead on their road to becoming professional football players. But despite that, South Korean fans hopefully will be able to see their hard work pay off at future World Cups.
2022년 카타르 월드컵 화이팅! 대한민국 축구 대표팀 화이팅!
Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Cirque du Soleil has returned to Seoul, but they're not the only such act in the nation. There's also a circus troupe in South Korea that has been performing for nearly a century. Issue turns the spotlight to these devoted stars.
Scorching fire spins at the hands of a man testing his own limits. Trapeze artists fly and spin in the air, defying gravity. The scenes are part of a show by Cirque du Soleil, or the Circus of the Sun, that has returned to Seoul after a hiatus due to the pandemic. This year, the Canada-based troupe is performing Allegria in a new light, an all-time classic reimagined for the new generation since its first performance in 1994. It tells the story of a power struggle after a kingdom has lost its king and unfolds an immersive experience with its surreal soundtrack, acrobatics, and sets.
Our objective is to touch everybody. What I would like everybody to feel is joy. And joy for me is a much deeper feeling than happiness.
Cirque du Soleil might be famous worldwide, but South Korea has its very own circus troupe originating from and performing around the country. Continuing the tradition is Dongchun Circus, the last remaining circus troupe in South Korea.
Welcome to Dongchun Circus, where performers swing from the air and walk on giant turning wheels blindfolded. The first in the country, the circus was founded in 1925 during the Japanese colonization of Korea. Led by its founder Park Dong-soo, who also went by the name of Dongchun, the troupe started with 30 original members. And for nearly a century, the troupe has been performing every year without a break. It traveled to wherever there were audiences, to cities and towns across South Korea. At the height of its popularity, the circus had as many as 300 members.
When we travelled to towns to perform at the peak of the circus's popularity from around 1965 to 1990, the entire town was in festival mode. The townspeople told everyone that the circus had come to town. It was the only form of entertainment when TVs and dramas weren't as available.
In 2011, the team built its own performance hall on Daebu-do Island, an hour's drive from Seoul. There, they put on multiple shows a day and welcome around 12 to 15,000 guests a year.
It was my first time watching, so I didn't know what it was going to be like, but it was great. The kids also found it fun.
The leader of the troupe says that there's something special about the circus.
When I watched the audience from backstage, people just seem so happy. People of all generations, and also those from other countries, are enjoying it because the circus is beyond language, and there is no trickery.
Regardless of size and scale, there is no doubt the circus brings joy to those watching one juggle and turn at a time. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
The mountains here in the nation are seeing changing hues thanks to autumn foliage. It's peak season in some of the most scenic regions. To catch the best views, it's a race against time once the leaves start falling, though. Song Yoo-jin tells us more.
With seasons changing, so do the colors of the leaves. And one of the best places to enjoy the autumn hues is Seoraksan Mountain in Gangwon-do Province, east of the capital Seoul. It's one of the most well-renowned fall foliage attractions that's loved by both locals and tourists in South Korea. And it's peak time here when leaves on more than 80% of trees on the mountain have changed color. It's less than a month since the first color changes were spotted, and this year's peak is only about 4 or 5 days later than last year.
It's a little past lunchtime, and as you can see, more people are coming here to see this amazing mixture of red, orange, yellow, and green.
So far this month, more than 200,000 have come to Seoraksan. That's still below figures recorded before the pandemic, but similar to last year's number.
Just coming here is like maybe 15 minutes, but I took like 10, 15, 20 pictures because it's just so beautiful. Like you have all the colors on the trees, on the ground.
The autumn leaves here are definitely more colourful than in Seoul, so it's really pleasing to the eye.
But the clock is ticking for those who wish to enjoy these vibrant colors. This is because these leaves will stay as they are for around only a week to 10 days. For Seoraksan Mountain, the colors will begin fading starting this weekend. Still, you can still head off to other parts of South Korea. Places in the south of the country like Jirisan and Naejangsan, as well as Hallasan Mountain on Jeju Island, will hit peak fall foliage from late October to early November. So those who want to enjoy some fall colors should look at their calendars and start planning now. And as most accidents in the mountains tend to happen in October, visitors should also make sure to keep an eye on where they're heading and the local weather conditions. 송유진, Arirang News, Yangyang.
Mild autumn weather will continue for most parts of the country this weekend. Skies will be overcast for tomorrow, but clouds will start clearing out on Sunday. Maximum temperatures will be warm, hovering around 18 to 19 degrees Celsius in Seoul, which is near the seasonal norms. And for those across western central regions, make sure to have a mask that can filter out the dust particles. The capital region and southern Gyeonggi-do province will see air quality standing in the bad category. The surrounding regions, including Chungcheongbuk-do province, will see dust concentrations temporarily soaring as well. With no rain in sight for the time being, layers of dry air will prevail across most regions. Please continue to watch out for wildfires. Overcast skies are expected for the morning hours. Lows in Seoul will be starting off at 10 degrees. As for the daily highs, Seoul and Chuncheon will be reaching 19. Gyeongju and Busan will be topping out at 23 degrees. Next week, a surge of frigid air will enter into the country and early winter-like conditions are expected. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.